Okay. Susan McCready
Here voting.
and Kate Chaplin. Okay, I don't see Kate, so Todd.
Teresa, why don't you take voting?
Okay, me? Okay, I'll vote.
Okay, thank you. Dwayne Bolt,
Here voting.
Robin Sue Tapley,
Here voting.
Marie Yarborough, Lily Simis,
Here, not voting.
and Christy.
Here voting.
Okay. John Bench. Not here. Susan Allen. Am I the only Southwest Harbor person here? Oh, John Eisenhower. Okay. So no John Bench, not Susan, John Eisenhower,
I guess I'm voting.
and Ingrid Kashmar voting. Jim Sawyer. I do not see him. Okay. Heidi Lawson.
Oh,
Not here. Jessica Stewart.
I'm here and I think I'm voting because right now I think I'm the only person.
Okay. Jessica Bass. Carrie Hayes. And Roger St. Amand. Okay. That's confirmation of board members. Next up, we approve the voucher via DocuSign, and the next item is approval of the minutes for December 14th. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Heather.
Thank you, Heather. A second?
Second, Jessica.
Jessica, thank you, Jessica. Okay, I'm going to go through, any discussion? All right, I'm going to go through the voting roll. Heather,
Approved.
Teresa,
Approve.
Susan,
Approved.
thank you. Dwayne,
Approve.
Robin Sue,
Approve.
Christy,
Approve.
John Eisenhower,
Approved.
Ingrid approve, and Jessica Stewart.
Approve.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
Not aware of any, Ingrid. We'll report it out if we receive any during or after the meeting.
Okay. All right, next up is principals report.
Well, hi, everybody. It's good to see you on a Tuesday night, which is a little bit of a change up, but that's fun. So I just had a few things I wanted to go. People have access to the digital version of my principals report, and there's plenty of things in there that people can delve into. There's a few things I wanted to hit on specifically. Under student updates, I did want to talk about the trend. We sent out last week a survey to families about the second semester, how students wanted to proceed with their learning, whether they wanted to be hybrid or in person, hybrid or virtual. And we got a fair amount of results back on that, 450 or so people. And the net upshot of that is that about 30 people wanted to move from hybrid to virtual, and about 20 wanted to go the opposite way. So it's a net migration of 10 towards the virtual option. So that leaves us with about, these are rough numbers because now all day today I've been getting, wait a minute, because is it too late to, so these are rough numbers, but we have about 170 or so virtual students, and then the rest are hybrid, which at the beginning of the year, it was more like 100. So that number has increased. And that being said, it was awfully nice to see the students walk through the doors today. It wasn't much like school around here the last couple of weeks. I mean, it was inside the computer, but it wasn't inside the building. And so it was nice to see that. The last couple of days, students have been in doing their athletics. When we'll talk a little bit, or I'm going to let Bunky talk a little bit more about those specifics in a few minutes, just kind of activity by activity. But all in all, though, that's an exciting piece of action going on. So it's awfully nice. And the last thing I want to say about that is that we did go through this last 2 weeks of remote learning. And even though it happened right after vacation, it still happened very rapidly. And our teachers are really deserve a high five, or a virtual high five, or whatever it may be, just for how quickly they transitioned. There were zero days of downtime for students while teachers got ready, even though this word didn't come out until afternoon on the Saturday at the end of vacation. So kudos on that. And that being said, it's awful nice to have this, or at least some of the students, back today. I put a link in the document here, just kind of getting at something that's been kind of bouncing around out there, around the idea of what are the learning gaps, what's the loss in content that the students have had to endure between March and now. And I'm not wanting to minimize that. There has been some of that, clearly. Although when you look at overall, we don't have a lot of local results, but statewide, it has actually, when students are doing achievement tests, that gap is not as big as one would anticipate. With that being said, I linked an article there, and then I pulled a quote out of the article. This is from Teresa Thayer Snyder. She's a former superintendent in the Voorheesville School District in upstate New York. And among other things, she said this. She said, "I sincerely plead with my colleagues to surrender the artificial constructs that measure achievement and greet the children where they are, not where they think they, quote, should be. Resist the pressure from whatever powers that be who are in a hurry to fix kids and make up for lost time. The time was not lost. It was invested in surviving an historic period of time in their lives, in our lives. The children do not need to be fixed. They're not broken. They need to be heard. They need to be given as many tools as we can provide to nurture resilience and help them adjust to a post-pandemic world." So she said it a lot better than me, and I don't need to go on and on about that. And again, I'm not intending to downplay the importance of content that people may have not have covered. And I just want to make sure that to point out still that there's been an awful lot of learning, and the important thing is that we take care of each other and we take care of the students, so that when things normalize, that they're ready to go from there. That's the most important thing, is where they're ready when that time comes. So that's something that I wanted to make sure I brought up. Certainly, I'm happy to have more conversation about that if people want to call or chat or whatever after read the whole article, but I pulled those lines out of it. Speaking of after the pandemic, we've begun planning for next year. Not that the pandemic will be wholly over in September, and we are optimistic, at least at this point, that we can have a higher density of students in the building come September, and that's really out of all the mitigation practices that we have to do to keep each other safe from COVID, the one that makes school most challenging is the physical distancing. You know, if you don't have to have 6 feet between each student, or even 3 feet between each student, which some of the schools are doing, you can proceed without. I mean, we can wear masks, we can wash our hands, I hope to goodness, and we can stay home when we're sick. Now, those are the other 3 things, but it's that distancing piece that makes it challenging. So I think there's hope that we can, come September, move beyond that. And what we're also hoping, and I don't have a lot of details for you tonight, but I do want people to know that we're looking toward the future with the idea that September of 2021 will not just by definition look like September of 2019. We're not just going to say, okay, we're done. We're going to go back to exactly the way we've always done everything. Some of the things we've learned during this pandemic is we've learned how to be flexible and meet individual needs. We've learned how to reach students that we hadn't previously reached. We've learned how to use technology to great advantage. Now, that's not to say we're going to just do everything technology-wise, but we've learned great skills with that. We've learned how to value relationships and what we're missing. We've learned about a different schedule. We've learned about a different start time. We've learned about giving teachers a little bit more time to prepare and to work together. We've learned about a lot of things that have worked well in this time, and we don't want to just throw all those out because we can. So as we get ready for next year, we may look at trying to hang on to some of those changes. And so, like I said, I don't have a lot of specifics about that to talk about tonight, but I did want people to know that we are looking ahead, and that has been a very refreshing thing to be able to do. A couple of other things. I wanted to make sure people knew the trustees have met, although they were supposed to meet last week and something got fouled up. So we're going to meet next week. But that planning process is still going on for the science and library projects. I'm going to skip over the athletics and extracurricular, then come back to that, Bunky. At the end of this semester, so that's this week, this is the last week, so we can see that there's some alternate schedules. It's probably, if you don't have a student in high school, it seems flabbergasting, and hopefully not so for everybody who has a student in high school. But anyway, the schedule is different this week and next as we adjust to changing schedules and the crossover to the second semester. One thing to keep in mind about, I often get asked, in a typical year, we have a professional day in between the semesters. And sometimes it's important to remind people that the first day of the second semester is essentially the first day of school. We would never ask teachers to show up in August or September and have no time to prepare for their whole school year with a whole new group of students and a whole new group of courses. So we certainly wouldn't want to do that with the second semester. So it's important to always remind, that's not necessarily just so teachers have a chance to do their grades from the first quarter or the first semester. It really is, it's the first day of school. So we do appreciate the second day this year and moving that professional day from February to now, to this week. And so that will really help them be prepared, help us be prepared. The last thing I wanted to talk about before I go over to Bunky to talk about athletics is, you've heard us mention several times this year about a program that Julie was able to bring to us that helps model civil discourse and facilitating important and deep conversations. And we found ourselves very fortunate over the last couple of weeks to have had done that work and to have built some of those skills in our classes. Some social studies teachers in particular had some challenging conversations with things that are unfolding in Washington, D.C. and such over the last couple of weeks. And I think teachers did find that the ones who had been able to use that Touchstones curriculum ahead of time were well set up to succeed with that. And Julie, did you want to mention anything more? Julie, like I said, was the person who found this for us and brought it here. And she also, as it worked out, has been a practitioner of it as she's been filling in and teaching a class for us, or 3 classes for us all semester. So Julie, do you have anything you want to add?
The district collaboratory met not long ago because this is a program that's being implemented 5 through 12. And we just met to sort of debrief how it went. And there's varying degrees of, comfort level with it. And part of it is because we were sort of competing with, I got to teach this and I got to teach that. And you're supposed to attribute a Touchstones discussion per week. And in a normal school year, that's pretty easy to do. So I will not say this is every kid got it once a week. I know that's not true, but the freshmen did. And because we prioritized it, it was part of our team building focus for the incoming freshman class. So they did get 1 hour Touchstones discussion. They've done 13 under their belts. And the beauty of the Touchstones work is they learn how to run their own discussion. So, the teacher doesn't say anything. And the teacher actually debriefs with them and talks about how well did they listen to each other, and how well did they exhibit respect, how well did they actively try to invite quiet people into the discussion in a way that was safe. So these are the goals of the program. And, it starts off pretty bad, right? They're bad at facilitating a discussion. And, it doesn't take long though, in 13 weeks for them to run very important discussions about, events happening in our world in a way that's respectful and safe. And I was crying as I watched them do such a beautiful job. I know that I'm partial; those were my students, and I got to enjoy that privilege and be with them for this semester. So I was really grateful for that. But I also see the power of the program as we move on, and these guys go on to next year. And next year, when they implement, they're going to have such a strong foundation. And then the incoming freshmen next year will have had some preliminary work in 8th grade. And I'm feeling very hopeful about that particular process. And I don't want to take credit for it because this came out of the Social Studies Collaboratory. That was a year's worth of work for a team of teachers across the district who identified updated standards, and in that process identified civil discourse as being a primary important thing that we needed to explicitly teach. And, this is a program that does that. So anyways, that's it.
Thanks, Julie. And just to wrap that up, I want to not take it for granted that we're able to do things like that here. The Touchstones program, the power in it is in the people who lead the work, and it's not an insignificant investment. The materials or the curriculum itself was something we had to purchase, and we also invested a fair amount of time in professional development. And with time comes money, and again, just don't want to take for granted how fortunate we are here to be able to do things like that for our students. So thank you for that. I'm going to kick it over to Bunky next, unless somebody had questions for Julie about Touchstones.
Any questions for Julie? All right, Bunky.
So thank you, and glad to see everybody. 2 weeks ago, we decided, Mike decided to shut down school for 2 weeks. Obviously, all extracurricular programs, whether it's athletics or non-athletics, came to a halt. During that time, both Matt and I and Ingrid started receiving emails from concerned parents about the well-being of their children, and we kept telling them that once school begins, if it's safe, we'll be back, starting back up again, which happened yesterday. You can see in the principal report, there's an outline of what is happening at this time. I will tell you, things change by the minute. Example would be the swim meet on Friday against GSA now is going to be Coney because another school in our league opponent was shut down today. So the competition level of us going against Coney instead of GSA, and not being disrespectful to GSA, it's better us to go against Coney. So this thing is going to change all the time. Just be forewarned of that. I will tell you that the last 2 days in the gym, in the weight room, in the hallway, you see a little extra step in the kids. They're pretty excited being back. Body language tells a lot, and we're looking forward to having a very rewarding season. As far as the middle school, they started today. I don't know the next steps for them. I think they're just doing in-person training right now. I think they might be looking to do some scheduling later on this week. More information on that to come. One thing that's not mentioned in that thing is ice hockey. We do have 2 individuals traveling to John Baptist, participate in ice hockey with that school. Those 2 students will be totally virtual. That's John Baptist's requirement, and the parents have agreed to do that. That's no cost to us. It's just an opportunity for those kids that love to play hockey to play. The fine arts program, as I said in my outline, the drama is starting up the 1 acts, and the fall musical is not done yet. They're still trying to get everybody together and finish that up. But I think the plan is to do a 1 act festival sometime in March, and then doing something here on the island publicly, in person, outdoor, in cars performance. More information on that to come. Did have a good conversation with Bronwyn today about show choir. She's and I think Matt can back me up on this, that she's got a great vision of what she wants to do, and it's pretty safe from what I saw. And looking forward to her doing her performance. She's very creative, and she's got a well thought out plan. And then for the athletic portion, we got something scheduled up till the end of February, and fingers crossed that we can get everything in as scheduled. But again, please note, things will change daily, if not hourly. There'll be no spectators allowed at any events. We will live stream as many events as we can. I must give credit to the fellow athletic directors thinking outside the box to trying to get swimming and indoor track events happening. Good thought out plan. Hopefully the distant runners can go to the Cross Insurance Center and run, but right now that's on, it may not be there after next week, because I think that's going to be a center in Bangor for the vaccinations. More details to come. So any questions on what I outlined? I know you got a lot to do tonight. I just wanted to give you a quick update per Mark and Matt and Ingrid's suggestions.
And any questions for Bunky? Thank you for just navigating this in the best interest of our students. I mean, these, as we've heard from a lot of parents, these kids have lost a lot. Athletic, co-curricular, extracurricular, whatever. And, I appreciate your efforts. It's not easy to try to wrangle something that is changing all the time, but everybody appreciates the effort and the work that you guys are doing.
One other thing though, the people that reached out to us, the parents that were concerned, feeling the kids have lost stuff, were very respectful. They were well-written letters and emails, and I really do appreciate that. I was getting a little nervous at first because a lot of people haven't reached out one way or the other, and it was nice to see this group of people come together and advocate for what they feel that we should be doing in a safe way, and it was done very respectfully, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Matt, do you have anything else in your principal's report?
No, that was it. Thanks.
Okay. So then we're going to segue into the second semester programming update.
Yes, and so that I kind of hit on some of the key topics that we didn't really know much about until we started getting the results back from our survey. We wondered how many people would switch cohorts. So we thought if there had been a huge migration toward virtual, that we might have wound up being able to have students in person, the in-person students in every day, but that didn't happen. So we will continue to have the hybrid version of the schedule with each cohort being in person for 2 days and remote for 2 days. And then the Wednesday is for office hours, which as we saw as the semester went on, the office hours I think got used more and more frequently and to more success, which is typical. Students will often reach out for help more towards the end than at the beginning. And our experiential classes are also going to continue on using some of our experiential classes using extended time on Wednesday. So right now, the second semester will look much like the first as far as that goes. And hopefully we can stay in a hybrid setting. If we wind up in a circumstance that we have to go back to remote for a period of time, we'll be ready again like we were this time. And just knowing that's the plan for now. And we will always look to reassess as conditions change in whatever way they change. As Bunky said, everything changes pretty quickly. And so we'll be ready to go along for the ride with those changes.
Okay, any questions for Matt about anything so far in the meeting or Bunky? Christy.
I don't really know what the question is I'm asking, but I was involved in a lot of my child is completely remote, so this isn't really about my child, but I was involved in a lot of conversations about lunch at the high school level and how unhappy some kids are with their lunch situation, that they're spending their lunch hour on video chats with their parents because there's no one in their advisory that they talk to, that they have. And I don't know what the answer is, Matt. I don't know how to help these kids. I just wonder if there's some kind of alternative or way that like small groups of kids can sign up to be in a room together. So there's some sort of social aspect to lunch. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because I was having it with different people at, in different locations. And so I know it's an ongoing issue.
Yeah, that's probably the worst thing about this school year is the kids are just so isolated from one another physically. Like as much as they connect through their phones, it's not the same. And they are significantly disconnected. Here's the problem with mixing people up and letting them get outside of their advisories during lunch. If somebody does that and then someone tests positive, our contact tracing has just gone bonkers. And instead of it being contained to the people in those rooms, we would wind up losing a huge number of students to a quarantine that frankly probably would be unnecessary. Like it's very unlikely that people are transferring COVID from one to another here at school when they're following the rules. But the way that the protocols are set up, it's different in schools than it is in the general public. If you're in the same classroom with somebody, even if you're well over 15 feet away even maybe for less than 15 minutes, you're a close contact. So if we started mixing people around during lunch, that would be great until 2 days later when we'd have to go back into a remote learning setting, unfortunately.
Christine.
Is there any thought to or any discussion about those quarantining rules? Because it seems like when we're tracing these positive people back, it's almost always a case of a social gathering, a small gathering without masks outside of school. So almost to the point that quarantining these kids who are in the same class with someone is like overkill or not really necessary. And I don't know how you feel. Maybe you feel it is necessary. I'm just asking, like, do we think that there's going to be a change to that the more we learn?
Yeah. Here's what I think about that. It is very frustrating when that happens because not only in our schools, but schools nearly everywhere, it's been pretty clearly shown that there's not much transmission within the schools. And so that is frustrating when those quarantines get so large, when those contact tracing elements get so large. And I also know that the people, so just to clarify, those aren't our rules, those are CDC and DOE rules. And I've also been, I have to say, I've been one who has been quoted quite a few times as saying we shouldn't be making up our own rules. People who know what they're talking about are making these rules. And those are the people in the state of Maine that have kept Maine as a state. Now it's bad in Maine, but it's nowhere near as bad as it is in many other rural states. It's not just that we're rural. There are things we're doing in Maine that have helped keep it. Not that, like I said, it's bad, but it's not bad like it is in other parts of the country. So the next thing I'll say about that is that we do have an accessible and flexible set of leadership at the state level and in the CDC, in the Health and Human Services, and in the Department of Education that are listening and are watching and know the impact of their decisions. And we're also lucky to have those people who are willing to talk to us. So I get a chance to meet with the Commissioner of Education each week, and she often talks about things like this. And she, frankly, these are not even really DOE rules. They're really mostly CDC and DHHS. But she listens, the governor listens, and those other heads of department listen and make the rules that by and large make us safe. And sometimes that has a potentially outsized impact when there is a positive case. And that being said, we're not having transmission within the school buildings, and that's really important for us to be able to stay here as much as we can.
Any other questions? Okay, so we will move on to discussion items, which is the the budget for fiscal year 2022.
So Nancy sent both, at the end of last week, she sent the updated budget. And then today she sent the updated, well, the first version of what the assessments are town by town. Before you go too deep into those, I want to explain why there are two versions. When we met last time, I talked about the fact that in expiring the debt from the Art Wing project from 20 years ago, a big payment came out, a big principal payment came out. And along with that came out the revenue that we generated from the tuition surcharge to the tune of about $150,000. That was going to cause a significant increase in our assessment to the towns. So what we had planned to do last week when the trustees met is we had planned to reduce the request from the trustees by that same amount of $150,000 that we were going to lose in tuition revenue. We weren't able to have the trustees meeting because it turned out that we wound up having overlapping meetings, and you can't do that with Zoom. So we had to postpone the trustees meeting. But the trustees are going to meet next week, a week from yesterday, and I'm going to propose that cut of $150,000. So that's why you have two versions of the budget. One is at one level and one is at 150,000 less than that. Out of respect to the trustees, the last time they met, their proposal was the 880,000. So I didn't want to just completely remove that from the budget without officially having that notification. I mean, I've had conversations with many of the members of the trustees, and I don't think it'll be a surprise when we meet next week. But I just thought, out of respect, we should have two versions to look at. So that being said, this budget has changed since the last version by, well, it depends on what you're talking about, but has been the things that have changed is we went down, as just like at the AOS, we went from 10% anticipated increase in health insurance to 8%, which is obviously a net reduction for the high school. And also as part of the AOS decision to take the $80,000 for asymptomatic testing out of the AOS budget, that put $22,000 back into the high school budget for our share of that. So that kind of, those nearly balanced each other out. Another piece that has changed since the last time, I'm looking at my budget summary sheet. There's some things highlighted in green that are new. We are hoping to amend that version down. So if you look at that budget summary and you look at the green highlights, that is what I would anticipate us looking at in February when we go to approve this budget. So you can see that the proposed budget has an increase of $164,000. That is with the additional items. Without the additional items, it's almost exactly flat. It's like $9,000 decrease, the turn the page version of this budget. With the additional items of that we've talked about before, of the gym floor, the permanent substitute positions, and rearranging the main office position to be a full-time. So that increase would be $164,000, which is a 1.39% increase from the current budget that we're in. And which is still is an assessment increase of $435,000, which is just over 5% to the individual towns. And I guess the last thing I want to do, I got today mid-afternoon the assessment by town values. That's that yellowed out information in this document. I just haven't had time to update that. It looks like this year Southwest Harbor is taking the brunt of the increase, but I'll get that information more specifically together. And of course, that increase is based on 2/3 of the valuation of the town and 1/3 on student enrollment. Looking down at the cost center situation, we have just under $400,000 an increase in salary, 8% for health insurance, and then the negotiated agreements, which you've all heard about, is being up in the air with the negotiations with the teachers and the support staff going on. Central office assessments up about 40,000. The learning areas are up about 50,000 this year, which is a really big jump. Typically, the reason that's such a big jump is two things. It's one of them is replacing money we cut last year for the laptop plan. We didn't intend to cut it until COVID happened, so we have to put that back in because we aren't sure what the laptop solution will be, but it's going to cost more than what we have in the budget right now. And then math is due for a textbook renewal. Those are the big costs there. Extracurriculars, about 35,000. Again, much of that is replacing equipment, the equipment line that we cut fairly substantially last year because we didn't use a lot of equipment in the spring, and we tried to go pretty thin this year, but we have to put that back up to the general level that we typically see. Maintenance and transportation is a significant decrease, primarily because of no bus. We're not buying a bus this year instead of buying a $350,000 bus last year. And also we also were able to cut some utility costs just based on usage and the solar panels, which has saved us some money. One thing that's good is we were able to cut about $11,000 from the social services budget based on not having to, now that we have the 2 school psychologists, we don't have to pay extra outside of the district for supplementary psychological evals. And the principal's office general school at 30,000 is resuming the furniture upgrades that we stopped in this year. Or at least we plan to stop until we got the COVID relief money that we're able to do a lot of good work with. So I'll definitely take questions. One of the things that's certainly important to look at is that 5.14% assessment increase. Last year we had just under 5. You can look back to the year before that. We actually had a decrease in the assessment, and the year before that, I think it was about flat. So we're at about 10% over 4 years, just for if you look at it over a broader period of time.
Any questions for Matt? Robin Sue?
2 questions. I may have missed it because first you said under the assessment increase by town, am I just reading it wrong? You said Southwest Harbor's taking the brunt of it?
Yes.
But it looks like they're at 0.38% versus Bar Harbor's 6.31%. But how do you read that?
Well, I probably shouldn't have said anything because I might have looked at it too quickly before.
Okay.
Give me a second. Oh, let's
I
see.
think Matt, I think you were looking at the additional cost per evaluation.
That is what I was looking at. That is, yes. Open recent. Oh, I didn't actually open it.
I think if you look at Nancy's summary sheet down
Yeah.
at the bottom, that may have been what you were referring to, not the budget summary that has the green and the yellow on it.
Oh, that yellow. Yeah, don't look at the yellow. That's
Okay.
not updated at all. That's why it's still yellow. You're not supposed to be able to see it.
Okay. All right. Then.
So do you see what I'm talking about, Robin Sue?
Well, I'm trying to toggle.
Yeah. So that's right though. Last year, Bar Harbor took the brunt of it, and Southwest not as much. So it typically does from year to year even out.
All right. So I guess I'm just not looking at the right thing. So that explains that. And then down in the little boxes under salary benefits, this is where I think I missed it because I was looking at that top piece. Why is there a line for salary and then negotiated agreements?
So the salary just reflects a step increase. When it's a negotiation year, when we're trying to build budgets, and if the agreement hasn't been reached, That is a placeholder. I'm not exactly sure how Mark and Nancy came up with the 176,000.
So it
go
is,
ahead.
thank you, Matt. It is a placeholder. It's a consistent framework we use across all of our budgets, Robin Sue. And I can get into specifics if you have a question, but
No, I was just confused as the salary, and now I understand that the salary piece is the
Yes.
steps, and I
Yes.
understand that now. Okay.
correct. And it's a placeholder that includes not just the teachers, but support staff, administration. So
Yeah.
it's like COVID, it's a moving target right now.
Okay. And I guess my last question is, I don't know that it necessarily has to do with this particular budget, but can you tell me how many teachers we have that are not teaching in the classroom, but from home? And then where do the funds come from that pay for the proctor that's in the classroom? Is that COVID relief funds? How are those people being paid?
We have 4/1 that's doing it for a very short period of time. So 5 teachers in that situation. And yes, those up until December 31st, those salaries were paid by COVID relief funds. In the interim, because we can't use that money. Well, actually, we got a little bit of flexibility to use that money beyond that time. In the interim, we are using the money from the subline to fill that gap. And then we're hopeful that if there is another round of COVID relief funds, that we can use that money.
Okay. Thank
There
you.
will be another round.
Another thing that I neglected to mention before is that this budget does include an 8% increase in health coverage costs. We are still 2 months away from knowing probably even what the maximum increase is. We get the information about health insurance in 2 phases. The first thing we'll hear sometime in early March, hopefully maybe mid-March, is what the worst case scenario is. So often they'll come and say, well, there won't be more than 6%. Sometimes that happens early enough. If it's significantly less than what we've budgeted, sometimes we're able to make an adjustment, but that is a massive amount of work in a short period of time to make an adjustment. And then usually the other thing that happens is just days before our public budget vote is on the first Wednesday in April, usually just days, or maybe even sometimes that very day, we find out what the actual increase is. It's that 8%, or each 1% is between $12,000 and $15,000. So it would be great if we could have that number be lower, but we just don't know soon enough. So we have to, and it would be pretty hard if we got it wrong and budgeted at 3 or 4% and it came in at 8. And then we'd have to find that money someplace else, which could be very problematic. So anyway, there have been times in the past that we've revised at the last minute, and that may be something that could happen depending on the timing. But I just want people to know it's a really big undertaking for Nancy in particular, to be able to make those changes at the very last minute.
Matt, Ingrid, if I may, just as a reminder too, if we're not able to make the adjustment, we cannot spend out of those line items that are not approved in the warrant or at town meetings. So that money by default, if we don't make the adjustment, would go to carry forward. That's important to underscore. And just the other thing with Nancy, she continues to do a great job, but you have to put into perspective, she's navigating also COVID relief funds on top of all the budgets, not 1, but 2 rounds and a 3rd one coming. So it's pretty significant. So hats off to those folks.
Do we anticipate having the AOS budget meeting and the high school budget meeting in our normal time frame, given COVID, or do we think that those are going to get pushed back later like they were last year?
We are are you speaking to me, Ingrid?
Yeah, yeah.
We are moving forward as planned. We'll work through Nancy. We're researching that with attorneys to make sure. I mean, we have to balance it obviously with COVID, but the short answer is yes. We want to do everything in our power to move forward. What we have to grapple with is making sure that the facility is safe, obviously, and that we can live within the guidelines of gatherings. I mean, it's a public meeting, but we have to be under the CDC guidelines for 50 or less. So we'll work to do that, but we don't want to make any assumptions that the meetings won't be well attended. We'll have
Okay.
more information on that in the next several days.
So is is the idea that people take this, review it? If they have questions, they should reach out to you, Matt. We'll revisit this again in March, right? Is there anything?
February.
Sorry. Oh gosh, I was a month ahead of where we are. Sorry. Do you want to add any explanation about the additional items if people have questions and need more information about those items?
Sure. So the three pieces that are there is the refinishing of the gym floor. We had planned, this was approved in our budget last year, the first time we went through it before we modified it. It's basically a job that's supposed to be done about every 10 years. We're on 14 right now. It's sanding the floor all the way down to the wood, and then repainting and refinishing the floor. And so that is what that's what that is. The gentleman who had received been scheduled to do the work before was kind enough to say, sure, I'll do it again this coming year for the same price that he had quoted for us. So that's that piece. Increasing the main office position. We do have in the main office, we have Wendy Littlefield, who is our bookkeeper and office manager. We have Lisa Richardson, who is a part-time secretary receptionist. And then this year we have Carrie Eason, who is a one-year person who's filling in as an administrative assistant for Jenny Rogers, who took a year leave of absence and is intending to return next year. So the position would be to increase that position that Lisa currently holds from part-time to full-time, to basically cover all of the administrative support for Julie and Ian and Bunky, to work on attendance, to also take some of the office load off of Wendy so that Wendy is typically spending a lot of time doing office stuff, and the bookkeeping that needs to be done in a more structured and logical pattern of work is often getting pushed outside of the school day because of so much office student and teacher interaction that has to happen. So that would help us tremendously to have that position full-time. So in a full-time position, it's a change position, so that's something we'd have to re-advertise and open up a position for. And then the last one is what we found this year is having those permanent substitutes has been really impactful for students. Teachers, when they have a planned absence, they can talk to the person ahead of time. They can plan, they can know who's going to be in their class. They have somebody who knows the students, knows them in the context of being an adult in the room, and is able to kind of maintain better continuity on a sub day for the teacher for whatever reason they may be out. So we added those two permanent positions as an Ed Tech 3, and which will cost about $103,000. But then we also decreased our subline by $53,000. So it's a net increase of about $50,000 to add those two permanent full-time full-time school year sub positions that will really make it much more seamless when people have to miss school.
Thank you. Christy.
Those two permanent subs, that's with salary and benefits, right? Those are benefit positions that you're adding?
Yes, it would be an hourly rate on a level 4 on the pay scale, and then they would be eligible for benefits.
Okay. Any other questions for Matt about these additional items or the budget? Okay. So there's the summary sheet. I'm assuming that is just part of what you just went over, right? Okay. So then we need to have an action item to approve the revisions of the 2021 MDI high school calendar. I correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's nothing that we haven't seen before. We just didn't, when we approved it at the AOS level, I think we were approving the K-8 calendar or something, and we didn't approve the high school calendar. So
Yep.
that's
Ingrid,
what we're gonna do.
Matt can walk through it, but I would characterize this more as housekeeping. This is not significant. This is not a new item or significant change. It's making sure we have alignment.
All right. So Matt.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just, it's making the calendar match with what the changes that happened at K-8. It really is just, it was unclear, even when Selena went back and watched the video, it was unclear whether the motion that was made, because most of the conversation around the change in calendar was about the early release dates for the K-8, which we're not doing. We did have until that date a unified calendar, and I guess just once we came to this situation, the calendars split again. But essentially, it just lines us up. The two changes primarily here are this coming Friday, like 3 days from now, is on the old calendar was showing an early release, and that would move to the full professional day as they did in the K-8. And then basically then the only other change on there is removing the professional development day that was the day before February vacation. So it's essentially moving that day to this coming Friday.
Gotcha. Christy?
It's just a calendar question. The next Tuesday on the 26th, where the juniors are having their PSATs, is everybody else just doing a remote school day? It's not a day off of school. Right.
No, it is a day off of school.
Oh.
Excuse me. Because it's the start of the second semester, we thought it would be a big mistake to have the first day of class be a jumbled up mess, pulling teachers to proctor, having really the first day, it's important that all the kids are there together. So the teachers can have an organized launch on here's my expectations, here's what we're going to do, here's how you get graded, all those syllabus, all those first day of school things. If we did that on the Tuesday and then try to do it again the next day, it would have been a wasted day. So that is only a school day for the juniors that day, for the juniors who signed up for the PSAT.
Matt, could I just add something to that?
Yeah, Julie.
Yeah, I don't think people understand the degree of manpower required to facilitate the PSAT. Mostly every teacher is used. So, and we don't have as many taking it this year, but we've noticed that because we have to have smaller classrooms, we still need the same amount of bodies. So it's not uncommon to have one teacher on one student because of their IEP plan. So it really is an all hands on deck type of day anyways. So I just wanted people to know that.
Marie and then Christy.
First of all, I apologize for being late. I had the wrong time on my calendar. I'm mortified. Anyway, I apologize. So my question is, I know that we our days aren't being tracked the same or accounted for the same, or there's, I don't know what the language is by the state in terms of like what we have to have in the classroom. I'm wondering if we're doing that anyway. We know what our actual academic days are, how many half days we have, and what that really looks like in terms of actual number of hours that kids are in school.
We do know that there's a significant reduction. It's a reduction of about an hour and a half a week or more per class. And it's also a time to one of the things that we have been talking about for several years in the context of proficiency-based learning is that seat time is not a direct line to learning. And so I think it's dangerous to start counting minutes. That being said, we certainly would like to have more time with the students. We would love to have the kids in every day instead of in a hybrid situation. We'd love not to be able to have this in and out. And Marie, you weren't here at the beginning, but I did talk about kind of the balance between a fervor to gain what has been lost content-wise versus the need to have our students feel cared for, have our students build resiliency, to build those other soft skills, so that when we come out of the pandemic, they're more ready to charge into the content. And so I think that that is an important piece to this. And I also think that the schedule that we've got put together is the best that we can possibly do when we're not able to have all of the students in the building at the same time because of physical distancing restrictions.
Marie, you can follow up.
Can I follow? So thank you. So are we tracking, like, for instance, there's no school on Tuesday, and that was the thing that was a change. Are we tracking even just regardless of whether or not they're in the building or not? I don't know is that happening as well?
Tracking what they're doing on Tuesday?
No. The days, so before you would have to make sure that you had, I can't remember, 100.
Oh, I see.
Regardless if they're online days or whatever, are we still tracking that even though we don't have to make up the days at the end of the year in the way that we had to before? Are we still tracking those academic days, whether they're remote, half day, in person, or whatever?
We're tracking them, and we know that that engagement time is important. We're not keeping an accounting of days lost. We're not.
But I'm going to interrupt you, Matt, though. I mean, Selena, I'm sure, is keeping track of how many days the kids are in school, whether that's a remote day in school or whether that's a lost academic day. I'm positive that Selena is keeping track of that information.
That's affirmative. We have to account for when students are in session, and we have to report that out to the Department of Education.
So I think, Marie, in the past, I feel like it was 75 days or something. Like, we had whatever our schedule was, just let's say it was 180 student days and 185 teacher days. This year, that probably looks like, I don't know, 170 days. I don't know. I'm just throwing numbers out there. But Selena is tracking that information. Is that what you were asking?
Yes, essentially, as somebody, are we keeping track of that? And I
Yes.
understand there are some decisions or some theories or some feelings or data about what we do with that information and whether or not it changes our behavior or it changes our policies or whatever. I understand that, but I still think it's important to ask the question of whether or not we're tracking it. And we're probably going to have just some disagreements, just whether or not they're informed disagreements or not informed disagreements about what that means. But I think it's important that we have that information. And I know people I'm one of the reasons I'm asking is, frankly, I'm getting people asking me that.
Mm-hmm.
I have parents asking me, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that we have to,
Yes.
track that, and we know what that looks like. But I've got a lot of parents asking me those questions that I can't answer about what that looks like. And so I think it's important that we be able to say, yes, we're tracking it. And I feel like it's important for us to say, and we're are paying attention to that, because it is important. I mean, if being in school wasn't important, then we wouldn't have had so many conversations about our calendar and, you know, whether or not we have a 5-day break over Thanksgiving or not, because we don't want the kids to be away from us for 5 days because that's too long. I mean, so, you know, I mean, people have been apprised of those conversations and heard us just have these discussions for years, and now they're asking some of those questions back. So it's important to be able to communicate what we're doing with that, that we're taking that information and how we're looking at it. Thank you.
Mark.
Marie, thanks for asking the question. First of all, yes, we are tracking the data, not just at the high school, but at all of our schools. We have to account for that. And I think I want to say this because I want to be careful how I respond, not necessarily respond, but I completely acknowledge the question that anybody may have. And if they have those questions, we can certainly provide the data. The context for all of us, and I know board members and Matt and the teachers and parents, we're all living this in different ways. And you know, when I try to balance this in my mind, I try to compartmentalize things because I'm looking at it, your question, through the context of pre-pandemic, and not an excuse, as Matt said, but it's hard to fit into that box given the scenario we're in now. But the short answer is yes, we are tracking it and we can provide that information. And I think it's important to report that out at all of our boards. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add that I think, you know, as with any business that is navigating this pandemic, everybody has had to change the way they provide the services that they give, and schools aren't any different. And so, you know, we say this, I know there's a lot of frustrated parents out there. I mean, I get it. You know, I'm a frustrated parent of 2 college students, but the reality of this situation that we're living in is that things have to look different because they have to. And, you know, assuming best intentions of everybody involved is paramount, I think. I mean, we all know what we're doing and how we're navigating it in our own lives. I mean, the teachers, the admin, you know, Mark, I mean, you know, this all started at the beginning of March, and it's been hard for everybody. And to expect that any facet of our lives is going to look normal in this, or that our kids are going to get what they normally would get, or anything, is just, you know, everybody's frustrated, but it's not reasonable to have the same expectations that we had, you know, on March 1st of 2020. So, you know, I think we're gonna, as Matt said at the beginning of the meeting, there are some really good things. And we heard this at our PEMATIC meeting last week with Julie M. There's a lot of really good technical stuff that the teachers have used because of the pandemic that's going to get carried forward. So I think it's like any situation, right? You step back and you reevaluate what good things you can take out of this experience to better inform how we educate our kids and how we need to do other things differently. And you know, I don't know. Everybody needs to realize that this is not an easy situation that anybody is navigating.
Ingrid, truth be told, and thank you for that. I want folks to know right out there in the public that, you know, accountability ends with me. I'm ultimately responsible as superintendent. But what I would say during this pandemic, you know, trying to lead our schools and our building principals and our teachers in their classroom, it's really not different than our personal lives. We're all doing the very best we can, and information changes, if not hourly, daily. And it's not an excuse. It's just, I think these meetings are really important to make sure those questions can get asked, and that we can provide the answers. I'm beyond the place where people, you know, agree or disagree. We are all trying to lead and move forward with capacity and making sure we do no harm So I appreciate these questions, and I think as we circle back with our administrative team, this is something we can put to the forefront, just recognizing that the most important thing we can do is have our kids in our buildings. We know our teachers and our staff want to be there. But, you know, at the end of the day, at what cost? And we're trying to balance that, the physical, the emotional, the mental. It's tough stuff. And everybody in our country and in our world is navigating that. You guys all know that. So we will revisit this and bring information forward.
Well, and I would just reiterate too, that if you guys get questions that you're not sure of what the answers are, just have them reach out to Matt, because, you know, if he can't get the answer, he'll figure out who to get it from and get that information to people. All right, any other questions? No. All right. Oh, Christy, you had your hand up though. Sorry, coming back to you. You're good?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to where the conversation just went. And that's the reason why I was asking those questions about the PSATs and the calendar and lunch, because there's been some harsh comments on Facebook the last couple of days about fed up parents and schedules and why does this calendar, and I don't know what the answers are, but I knew there were answers. I know that Matt and Ian and Julie are making decisions based with good reasons. And so I just wanted to ask those questions tonight so that you could say the answers. And if people are watching, they can hear you. And if they're not watching, now the board members, we know the answers. I don't think people realize when juniors take SATs, there's 5 kids in a room and a teacher in each room and timers. And how can you have regular school when that's happening? So I just think, you know, I thank you. Thank you for taking the time to answer all those questions, because I think all of us know and we feel confident that you have reasons for doing what you're doing, even though we don't always know what the reason is. And I think sometimes we just have to know so we can share it out and build everybody's confidence.
Yeah, that's really good to have some understanding. And, you know, Matt, it might go back to, you know, I mean, obviously I don't have a kid in the building anymore, but how we used to send the chalk talk out to people. I mean, that probably still happens, but I wonder if there shouldn't be some place on the website that gives some of that, right? Like, okay, PSAT day is a non-school day because da 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 da, so that parents have a place to go to when they're wondering some of this stuff. Maybe there's a way on the front end as decisions are being made to think about, okay, is somebody gonna have a question about this? Let's post it here so that there's an answer that's easily accessible. Marie.
Just to follow up on what Christy said, I mean, that's exactly why I'm asking these questions. I mean, I think the most important thing that we can do as a board is have discussions where we're asking the questions, we're hearing the answers. We've got all these people in the room who have different expertise and different perspectives, and the public needs to be able to have a place, maybe 5 or 6 places, maybe the website, maybe they tune into this, whatever. Maybe they can talk to a board member now that the board member like me knows the answer. But we have to be able to ask these questions. And I'm not suggesting that anybody ever gets defensive in any of the board meetings. I know that everybody is professional, but we have to remember that when we ask these questions are because somebody's got that question, and we have got to figure out a way to give them the answer that makes sense. And I think everybody does assume best intentions, but when you have a question and you can't get the answer, and then the person you ask, like me, doesn't know it, we have got to have these conversations. I just think they're very, very important to have in this format where people can go back and look and hear the longer version of life of why these decisions are being made.
Matt.
I think that is so valuable and so important to keep in mind. I would put a request out to board members if you're getting those questions. 2 things. Ingrid said certainly, you know, can direct people, but we are going to be able to much more eloquently answer these questions if we know about them before the meetings. So please, when you get them, shoot them our way. That would be super, super helpful.
Christy? Never mind. Okay. Jessica?
Just following up on the chalk talk thing, I think a lot of the information does go out, but it's kind of like a data sorting issue where sometimes it's hard for the most pressing things that people want to know to rise to the top. So figuring out, like someone was mentioning, the Q&A or some way that we could have better information sorting, because parents get a ton of information. So a lot of the questions that we were just talking about, actually the answers were out there. It's just that parents weren't somehow filtering through their stuff to get to those answers. So I don't have an easy solution to that, but if we can maybe some more interactive format on the website or something that would help people sort through the information to get to their answer faster.
Julie.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to be like really specific with our questions, because when I'm hearing the questions that have been presented tonight, I'm hearing really the real question is, are the kids learning and is it rigorous enough? And is the time outside of the classroom taken away from that? Which is a fair question. And I do want to assure everybody that we are talking about this. And there are kids at the end of the semester right now in AP classes, we're talking about giving incomplete STU. So, you know, our highest performing students we're struggling with the right level of balance. And, you know, what we used to do and what they're capable of doing under these circumstances. This is all new territory for everybody. So, but it is a constant conversation from freshmen to seniors, how we're getting them into college, how are they going to be ready for the next step? And it is not lost on us that this is a question. It's a question we ask ourselves. We're grappling with it.
Any other questions, comments? Did you have your, Christy?
You want me to make a motion to approve this new edited version of the calendar?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I move
would've
that we
totally
approve this
forgotten it.
revised M2021 high school calendar.
Can I
Second.
get a second, Heather? Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, let me find my, okay, I will do the roll call. Heather Jones,
Approve.
Teresa King Leclerc,
Approve.
thank you. Susan McCready,
Approved.
Dwayne Bolt,
Approve.
Robin Sue Tapley,
Approve.
Christy LaSquadro,
Approve.
John Eisenhower,
Approve.
Ingrid Kashmar, approve. Jessica Stewart.
Approve.
Okay, the motion passes. Okay, so future agenda items, we know we'll get the budget. I'm sure there'll be updates just in terms of how things are going. Anything else, Matt, Mark, that you can think about?
No, it will just be a lot of updates in the budget. So,
Okay,
and I know we have a master list that we work off of that Selena will give us if there's procedural things we need to do.
something else. Okay. Date and time of the next meeting is Monday. Go,
Yeah,
Todd.
Todd, yes, sorry.
I guess I would just say for future agenda items, maybe a follow-up to all these questions that were just asked about school days and accounting for that.
Okay, we will note that. Okay, date and time of the next meeting is Monday, February 8th. And that will be at 5 o'clock. And is there any other business? Okay, seeing none.
Ingrid,
What?
just,
Oh, sorry.
just if there's any board member that hasn't had the opportunity to sign the warrant and it's more convenient, I can make arrangements to come and meet a board member there and get that taken care of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Robin Sue, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. Just last week, the Ellsworth American put out an article about the Ellsworth School and their 20% failing rate. I know that we've discussed this before, but can you maybe give us an update? That seemed really alarming, and just curious, because we haven't had the conversation for a little while, if our failing rate is increasing, decreasing, staying the same. Where are we at?
Yeah, we should have that information in February, because mean, that is only like 3 weeks away, but we should have that by then.
If I may, Ingrid, I think, to Rob and Sue's question, and to Todd's points, we can have a follow-up in February with these items, some information, and we can also make sure there's alignment with information that needs to be shared at the elementary schools as well.
Okay. Bunky, hang on for 1 second. Robin Sue, were you looking for that information for the next meeting, or were you wanting a little bit of a summary tonight?
If we have any little bit of a summary tonight, but if we don't, the next meeting is fine as well.
Okay. Matt, do you have any anecdotal info?
Anecdotal, yes. Things have, anecdotally, things have gotten better grade-wise since the last time we talked, and if you just look at Power School, things often look really bad right before the end of the semester, and things generally get much better as things get finalized and people evaluate standards across. So I can't say anything more intelligent than things will look better. Will most likely look much better than they do right now, and right now they look better than they did a while back.
So that's encouraging. That's good. Bunky and then John.
Yeah. Is there an AOS meeting after the meeting on the 8th, or that's just going to be the one on the 1st of a public meeting, AOS public meeting, budget meeting?
I do not have my calendar in front of
Yeah,
me.
I don't have it in front of me, Bunky, so I'll have to get back.
Heather, do you know?
Yeah, at this point in time, nothing's been scheduled, but yes, likely we will have one. So I'd plan on it.
So we'll stack 2 meetings on the 8th.
Yeah, because the 1st is just the annual budget meeting.
Okay. You set, Bunky? John?
Along with what Robin Sue asked, I'm just curious about dropout rates, whether we've seen a change in the number of kids that have just disappeared off our radar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Matt,
That doesn't have to be now, it could be a future report.
That next meeting. Anything else? Okay, I would take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Jessica.
Second.
Second by Heather. Okay, and I have to go through the roll call, right? Okay, Heather Jones.
Move to approve.
Teresa.
Approve.
Susan McCready.
Approved.
Dwayne.
Approve.
Robin Sue.
Approve.
Christy.
Approve.
John.
Approve.
Ingrid. Approve. Jessica.
Approve.
Okay.